of each other. And my question is everything that we see currently going on, if we held that up to the standard or the bright light of loving our fellow man, what would happen? Okay, so we got this big thing going on in Canada right now, where they found the remains of those children, a tragedy, and we have the entire media world up in arms about that. As well they should be.
Sure.
I have no problem with that. But those 300 children, if you will, not to minimize them at all, but when you put that up in comparison with the concept of manifest destiny and the genocide that occurred in this country, I mean, it pales by comparison, but we never look at that. When we talk about that, let's pick something that's even more relevant. Let's pick this whole concept that seems to be going on in the news every day now about voter suppression, which either side of the issue you're on. My question is if you were worried about treating your fellow man the way you yourself would want to be treated, would you go down a road which restricted your fellow man from fully participating in your government? I don't know.
No,
is that a fair question? Is that a fair question?
That is a fair question. No, I believe everyone should participate. They don't have to. They're not forced to. I strongly believe in free will. I think that we are answerable to God, not the government. That's kind of an old thing in the Irish Catholic portion of the church. You might recognize it.
You're reading my mind. I agree with you. We are solely answerable to God. Although we always have that caveat, we see how spectacularly human and spectacularly divine Christ was in his intellect. And when he gets that coin and he says, whose image is on this coin? Mm-hmm. Well, then render to God what's God. And this coin is Caesar, so render that coin to Caesar.
Render the coin to Caesar,
you know? Christ saw the dichotomy of our life here on earth, that we are both in the world, but not of the world. It's just like our bodies. Our bodies are in the world, but our bodies don't function and cease to exist if we don't have a spirit. If our soul leaves the body, we die. But that unit out there that I see walking down the road is Mike Divine. That's a dichotomy. He's both physical and spiritual. And you can't have Mike Divine without having those two dichotomies all together at the same time. It is spectacular. We were talking earlier about purgatory. We were talking about limbo. Let me tell you something. I'm a chaplain at the hospital. I promise you, based upon my experience, when you're in the hospital and you're standing on the abyss of eternity, you are trying to make amends with your Creator. I mean, I see it every day.
Oh, I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. I'm sure. And
I think, and how wonderful that is. And we really don't spend enough time talking about the unfathomable mercy of God, so that we can do all these stupid things in this fleeting of a moment of when we live before we transition into the eternal now. How merciful the Lord is in forgiving our trespasses.
I would interrupt you just for a moment to say that many Protestants, and I'm first of all, I'm in agreement with the depth of mercy that God can give. I mean, it's endless, I'm sure. But some Protestant friends of mine in the ministry, as a matter of fact, not Pastor Hill, who was on earlier today, but some Protestant friends of mine who are in the ministry do not believe the Catholic Church believes in that sort of thing. They believe they are the church of punishment. You know what I'm talking about. Always threatening someone with hell, eternal fire for the least offenses. I mean, again, George Carlin said, "Can you imagine some poor slob doing life in eternity or life in hell because he ate a hot dog on Friday?" You know, that's that sort of.
So may I be so presumptuous as in a phrase to say that just ain't right?
No, it ain't, is it?
No, it isn't. They just got it wrong. As a matter of fact, John Paul II created as one of the pinnacle church feast days Divine Mercy Sunday, which is the first Sunday after Easter. So we're in the high Easter season, the most important feast day in our church, Easter. The very Sunday after Easter is all about mercy. So when somebody says to you, now the church is all about rules and regulations and you're going to hell. By the way, just as an aside, I'd ask anybody, any of our listeners, tell me one person, and go ahead and do the research. Tell me one person the Catholic Church has ever said went to hell. They won't find anybody. Church has never held that. Never held that.
Well, this is
not Adolf Hitler, not Judas Iscariot, not one.
Well,
so
you study church history far more than I have, and we had schisms, of course, where popes were excommunicating each other. And this was in the Middle Ages, right. Now, of course.
Yeah.
So it may be a grossly unfair comparison, but the church history, by the way, is fascinating for anybody who wants to look into it. You have to find the right author. One can write in a novelist style because real historians write like what they are. They're academics, and they're kind of they write in an academic language that's not necessarily entertaining.
Real church history, the ugly side of it, has as much interest as any author who puts out pulp fiction that you've ever read.
On the other hand, there have been so many wonderful people in the church who have sacrificed their lives for their God and for humanity itself. I mean, I wasn't trying to imply that any study of church history would necessarily focus on these negatives and crazy things. There are so many examples, like Mother Teresa, for example. People like her and many of the saints, they certainly deserve canonization based on the lives that they lived, including, by the way, John the 23rd, who was a saint.
Right. Absolutely. You know, Mike, the thing I enjoy about your program, and by the way, I believe it slops over into your other areas when I hear you on the radio talking about sports and that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very eclectic. You're willing to pop all the balloons, you know, all the facades of falseness. There's not a thing in the world wrong with that. It's wonderful. And I just enjoy it immensely. Enough said. You have to be able, and you and I repeatedly say this to you, we have to be able to discuss these things at a decibel level that allows us to hear the other person. You have to be able to do that. You know, you were talking, you want to read a book. You read Mother Teresa, the last book of Mother Teresa, and it's put out by her confessor, when she is talking about her doubts.
Yes.
At the end of life, at the end of her life, she's talking about her doubts. What's really happening there is she is channeling Christ in the Garden of Gethsemane, right before he was taken by the Pharisees.
We got to get off the air here, Joe, but could I ask you the author of the best book on Mother Teresa?
You and I will discuss it next time. There's a whole bunch of them, and I'm drawing a senior moment on.
All right, thank you, Joe. Thank you. We're going to have to go. Thanks to Joe Coleman. It's 5:00.
If you're into cars or just want to learn a thing or two, tune in every Saturday afternoon from 2 till 4 for the Under the Hood Car Show on AM 1400 KVFD, Fort Dodge.